with hilarity and opinion with Jamie, Simon and Hutch. The Newcastle Comparison, live weekly on NUFC Talk Radio, on YouTube and in all your listening platforms. NUFC Talk Radio, the voice of the Toon Army.
Hello everybody, I suppose. Welcome to the Newcastle Comparison. Isn't this great? There should normally be three of us on this show where we take a look at how things are going for Newcastle United and how they've gone in the past and how we feel about it. How do we feel today compared to years gone by, weeks and months gone by? How do we feel about us compared to other teams? Joining me is my friend David Hutchinson, the miserable mag, but one of many at this point in time, I'd say. How are you doing, Hutch?
I'm miserable, mate. How are you?
Ditto. Feeling exactly the same, but we'll get into that in a moment. First of all, a couple of things. We're here on NUFC Talk TV, of course. Please like and subscribe. Smash the likes buttons. If you're listening to us on the podcast from wherever you get your podcasts, then give us a follow, because we'll be looking back at, as I said, at times gone by when things might have felt a little bit better. And I get the feeling that we're going to need that a little bit this season, Hutch, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. It is not going well for us in the Premier League. So while the Champions League all seems to be hunky-dory and we are into the next round of the Cup, Carabao Cup as defending champions, the Premier League just seems to be going very badly indeed.
It feels nice seeing things like that, doesn't it? But yeah. Of course, we should apologise as well, because normally we've got our friend Simon Carhill with us. Simon's unable to be here tonight because he's had a bout of explosive diarrhea. He's been thrown off a bus at one point because of complaints from several other passengers. He's at home. His wife's just bought a hazmat suit. Sorry, hang on. I've just official message. Simon Carhill is unwell. So we're with him all.
That's the one. Yeah, get well soon, Simon.
I might have overshared there, Hutch, but I think I got away with it, yeah.
I think you did.
Speaking of feeling sick, this weekend, once again, all has not gone according to plan. I think that's fair to say to you, David. Newcastle United beaten 3-1 again, away from home again, in London again, this time by Brentford. So, here's an opening question for you, Hutch. Was that worse than West Ham, or was it not as bad? I'm not going to say was it better, because that's overplaying it.
I would like to say that it wasn't as bad, but I think I'd be lying to myself. After the West Ham, there was supposed to be an inquiry into what went wrong, and there was supposed to be firm discussions about who was to, what was to blame, who was to blame, what could be done about it. And the likes of Eddie Howe and Dan Burn came onto a stage and said that they hadn't been performing well. They know that they needed to play better. They'd had a good hard look at themselves. And then they turned in what was possibly the most abject performance of the season. And given that West Ham performance, that's saying a lot. What do you think?
I think if you take the games in isolation, West Ham was worse. A couple of reasons. First of all, West Ham hadn't won at home in months and months. And Brentford have got a pretty good recent record. I think they beat Liverpool, beat Man United at home this season. So on balance, it was not as unexpected to lose to Brentford, shall we say. And we came in at half-time ahead thinking, this is all right. Whereas at West Ham, I think from about 15, 20 minutes in, you knew it was going to be a disaster. But you're right. It feels worse through the prism of having lost at West Ham last week. And the noises they were making about, what was it, a period of reflection that they were going to have to kind of reboot the season, and it's just Groundhog Day all over again.
It is. To be honest, it's more the manner of this defeat. you can look at the West Ham defeat and say that no individual played well, and just
Yeah.
cut it off like that. In this game,
I'm
it just seemed
going to just stop you there, just in case Malik Chow was listening. Malik, you played well, mate. You've always played well, and we will have you on this program anytime, or you can come round my house for a cup of tea and some Schweissenwurst or whatever's your poison. Sorry, go on.
he did play well compared to the others, but I wouldn't say that he was outstandingly brilliant.
Hutch,
He
if you're
did.
not
He did.
be listening.
He missed the interception for was it the second or the third goal? But then he was partnered with Botman, and Botman, frankly, had an absolute disaster. So I was on the Thursday late night show on NUFC Talk TV, and me and pick myself up, and we were talking about who was better, Botman or Byrne at centre back, and I defended Botman to the hilt. However, today he was just awful. Like I feel slightly embarrassed for defending him to the hilt, because for the first goal, I mean, he flicks on that header direct back into the penalty box.
I know.
And I know Pope flapped at it, but still.
I've got to stick up for Botman a little bit, because I know what it's like to be in that position as a defender defending the corner, and if you don't know who's around you, and he was marking his man, and he got the ball ahead of his man, and you've just got to think, I've got to get this away from danger. I think Pope could have given him a bit of a call, maybe, if he was able to catch that. But yeah, it was a horrible header. He basically flicked it on for Shada, didn't he? But he was just trying to get rid of it under pressure. And, so I will say that for him. I don't want to be over defensive of the team today, because I think it was a bit of an unforgivable performance. But the error for me, and I think, comes from Eddie Howe, because and this is something we discussed at the time during the game, but it's just going to sound like a bit of an echo chamber because it's being said all over the internet. Dan Burn had a bad game, got beaten a lot down that side. He got booked, and perhaps Howe should have taken him off then. But when he got away with the penalty, not the penalty that was given, but the one that wasn't given, which for me was more of a penalty than the one that was given, that let-off should have seen Dan Burn come off. Bear in mind that Lewis Hall came on anyway and played really well. I think if Howe replaces Burn with Hall there, we maybe win that game, or at least get a point. So Eddie Howe, for me, has got to take the blame, Hutch. Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. He took far too long. I mean, it is one of the criticisms of Eddie Howe that keeps coming up, that he doesn't use his sub-bench quick enough during a game. But in that case, when first of all Burns already on a yellow card, and then they start targeting their right hand side, our left hand side, with just those balls over the top. And as you say, it didn't just happen once. We got away with it once. It happened twice. And I've only seen the incident once where Burns picked up that yellow card, and to me, it doesn't look like he's made contact. But then, like on reflection, reflection though, he doesn't. He just waits for the referee's decision and then just walks off as soon as he gets the yellow card. He doesn't dispute it in the slightest, which would suggest to me that he possibly has touched them. He knows he's touched them, and he was just hoping to get away with it. But
it's a bit like he got 2 yellow cards to make up a red, as he had 2, and it's like those 2 half penalty decisions added up the 1 penalty. If that makes sense. You thought, if that first one hadn't happened, you'd be screaming at the TV, going, "That's never a penalty. He's not touched him." But because we'd got away with the blatant first one, you sort of thought, well, we deserve this. And I had myself convinced that Aaron Ramsdale would save it.
Yeah. Well, when he came on, you were thinking, he's being brought on here to kind of like work that wonder, didn't you? Like how Krul was brought on during the Netherlands games back in,
Yeah,
when was it?
one of the
Euro?
World
It was one of
Cups.
the, aye. But
And yeah,
no,
to be a
unfortunately,
brilliant penalty saver in the shootouts, even though I can barely remember him saving a penalty in about 6 years at Newcastle. But
it didn't
such
work
is life.
out. Yeah, it didn't work out for us this time, unfortunately.
No. And with that said, there's obviously a lot of negativity about at the moment. We're 14th in the table. We actually could be in the bottom three if everything goes against us in the next round of games. And bear in mind, we've got Man City, and that Erling Haaland has just scored his 99th goal. It's probably a bit of an ominous matchup in 2 weeks' time. We've got a little couple of positives, maybe, but pressure's on. How would you say?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't agree with the people basically saying replace him now.
No.
So maybe not how out, but how needs to work it out as to how we're actually going to go back up that table. The worrying thing for me is that previously when we have played Man City, we never do well against them. The only time that we
No.
tend to is when Botman is on it and he's been able to kind of like isolate Haaland and work on him with that, but he just doesn't seem the same player since he's come back from that injury.
I think if you break it down a bit, we'll get to Man City in a later show, but just to break it down, I think we've had a few decent draws against them. We drew last season. We drew that 3-3.
Yeah.
Um, and we've beaten them in the League Cup a couple of years ago. But we always get marmalised at their place, no matter how good we are. But we do okay against them here, but we haven't beaten them in the league for an embarrassing length of time. I think Mark Ritchie scored a penalty about 5 or 6 years ago, and even then that was a bit of an isolated incident.
Was
So
that the game that Ryan Fraser got brought down in the box and yet didn't get a penalty? Or was that a
I
different one?
don't know. I don't know. But anyway, let's go back to Brentford. I'm sure that's what everybody wants. Well, going back to the Eddie Howe factor, because a little bit of a comparison that I did earlier was with this time last year. So this time last year, we thought we'd had a bit of a poor start, and it was a bit up and down, in and out. But this time last year, we'd had 5 wins, 3 draws, and 3 defeats, and we were 8th in the table. This time it's the other way around. It's 5 losses, 3 wins, and 3 draws, and we're 14th. And you could argue that the fixtures haven't been as bad. We played Liverpool at home and Arsenal at home. Last year we played Arsenal at home and beaten them. Played Spurs at home and beaten them, and we'd been to Chelsea away, albeit in a losing effort. But this year we've had this terrible away run, and we haven't been at any of the worst places really yet. I mean, you could say Bournemouth's a very difficult place to go, but or Villa, but it's not been a horrifying away run. Now, what I think is there's a couple of moments. There's the next month, and Chiwan Wissa has got to make an impact, because playing without a number 9 has been the big drawback this season, both at first when we didn't know who the number 9 would be, and from September onwards when he's been injured. Lewis Hall coming back will help. And if those two players in particular, Livramento not far behind, are integrated into the team, there's probably about a month that Howe has got to turn it round, to get the period of reflection, to turn it round like he did after Brentford away last year, because there is a big game on the horizon. There's lots of big games.
But there is a really big
Sunderland,
game on the horizon.
Sunderland the week before Christmas. That has got to be Judgment Day. If it's turned around by then, if we are still doing okay in the cups, if we can win that derby and get a little bit further up the table, I think a lot of the doubters will step back a little bit, if not disappear. If we lose that game on the back of patchy form, I think you could actually see the in-stadium crowd turn against Howe? Because I don't think anyone in that ground's against him, do you, Hutch?
No, I don't. But I, the Wissa thing is an interesting one, primarily because our issues aren't necessarily with defence. Like you said, our best performer this season, I mean, while, don't get us wrong, critical of Botman today, he has actually been really good for the majority of this season. We haven't conceded that many goals. Granted, we have conceded 3 in the previous 2. Our problem is basically we're not scoring goals. And we went through last week about how Murphy was pretty much the only performer on our wings, and yet we rely on our wing play to both create and score those goals. Now, Barnes has scored our goal today, and he took it really, really well. Obviously, like sitting down 2 Brentford players, putting through the legs of Kelleher was a fantastic piece of work. Our issue is going to be how we actually integrate Wissa, and do we drop Voldemar in order to integrate Wissa, or do we drop one of the midfielders and basically work it almost like as a 4-4-2, or alternatively, does Wissa play on that left-hand side? Because we've integrated Voldemar, and overall, although don't get us wrong, other than the assist for Barnes today, he didn't do a lot. I mean,
No, he
I've
didn't.
noticed that the Chronicle have given him a 3, which I think is really harsh.
Oh,
But he does go absent for a lot of these games because people aren't finding him. He needs to drop deeper and allow people to run in behind. But our wingers are so used to basically playing with a central striker and getting the ball into the box for that central striker that they just don't know how to work together. Now, with the introduction, sorry, mate, go on.
I was just going to say there was a moment where Jacob Murphy put an absolutely brilliant ball low and hard across the 6-yard box, and I said
There
at
was
the time
no one there.
there was nobody there. Went clean across the box. I said at the time, Isaac would have been there for a tap in, Wilson would have been there for a tap in, and Wissa would have been. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing, isn't it? Like get Johnny on the spot.
I think to a degree, Gordon might have been there for a tap in as well, because he is kind of like doing that whole getting on the back post. But again, he's been fairly absent for us all season when it comes to these Premier League games. But another factor in that is that Eddie Howe obviously needs time to work with these players. Voldemar came in very, very late. In fact, had the season started by the time he'd come in?
Yeah. They played, 3 games? I think he was sat at the Leeds game watching the match, wasn't he?
Aye. So he's had no form of pre-season with the team, and yet he plays in an entirely different way to Isak. And it is hampering us, and it is the reason why we haven't scored our goals. But it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime between now and whenever, because Nick Voldemar obviously is a brilliant player, so therefore he's gone off on international duty. A lot of the players who would be involved in that build-up have gone off on international duty, and as a consequence, Howe is basically left with the rest. So yeah, he needs to integrate Wissa, either as a striker or as a winger.
With Wissa and the wingers, couldn't you? Because you've got Murphy and Barnes are still there, and I think Gordon's pulled out of the England squad. Whether he can train with the team or not, I don't know. But I think that's it, innit? They've got to get used to Wissa. And Voldemar playing behind a striker. If Wissa's the target, Voldemar can kind of pick the pieces up, do a bit of link play. So that's what we're relying on. That's like the magic roll of the dice for Howe, is for Wissa to integrate into that team, for them to find that formation. And I think Lewis Hall will help a lot, because we said before, if Howe had taken Dan Burn off at the right time and brought Hall on, it would have made a difference. Lewis Hall nearly made a goal where he went to play Alanga in, and it was a brilliant clearance from the Brentford defender under the bar. So him coming back in, it sounds mental in a way, saying, the left back's going to change up our game a little bit, but I think he will.
We do play with basically like wing play. So having two actual wing backs in Livramento
Mm.
and Hall. And Livramento, I've seen, is back on the grass training as well. So
Yeah.
hopefully he's not going to be too long. And those overlapping runs, underlapping runs, they'll help us create more as well. So I do think, and as much as I love Burn, he's not a left back. And
Do you
Trippier is how old now?
think Dan Burn doesn't get back in this team now because he's
No,
going to be suspended
I think he does. I think he'll eventually get back in at centre back because
at centre
Bo-
back?
I think I think Botman really needs to. Well, there's a few people in that team who need to be looking over their shoulder because, and in fact, this is one of the things that I was going to ask you today, right? Is Howe too loyal to some players? Because Nick Pope, as good as he is, has made some absolute howlers this season. Like, and even in pre-season, he wasn't brilliant. I mean, we were there at Celtic when the ball went straight over his head.
Oh yeah. Is
And
he
you've
too
got,
loyal? I don't know. I think it's overplayed a bit sometimes. He's playing Dan Burn at left back because he's the best option at left back at the moment. And I can kind of understand protecting Lewis Hall through this international break to give him the best
yeah,
chance of recovery. But today it went too far, and he should have took him Burn off when he was booked and stuff. I do think I'd like to see Ramsdale give him more of a chance in goal. But it's more of a case of a tried and trusted formula, I think, with Eddie Howe. The question is that formula running a little bit dry? And
well, our midfield hasn't looked right. I don't think for
yeah,
a couple of games now. I mean, Joe Linton went off and Ramsey came on. Ramsey didn't make that much of a difference, but he was there and he was capable. A lot of the passing today and against West Ham was just miles off.
oh god, yeah,
They don't seem to be. There does seem to be some disconnect currently between the players.
yeah. And so as I say, I think there's a couple of phases there. I think it is reactionary after the way Eddie Howe's constantly rebooted and rebuilt that team to be wanting them out now. And I don't think it'll be anything like the opinion in the ground. You get a lot of stuff on the internet, I think, where people can be a bit reactive and say, "Oh, get rid of him," or "I'm going and supporting the LA Lakers." Go on, off you go then. But he's earned this season. I think he's earned this whole season.
Yeah,
Because he's won us a cup. He's consistently improved the team over time, and he's turned us around. And we've been in a couple of bad runs. I'd argue this might be the lowest we've been this far in the season, but for what he's done in the past, he's earned the chance to see can he turn the league form around. And when you're in the ground, the team and Eddie Howe have the full support of everybody in that stadium. If they lose to Sunderland, that might start a waiver, but even then, I think if the crowd is turning, he needs a chance to defend the Carabao Cup. He needs a chance to go as far as he can in the Champions League and even the FA Cup. And when all those competitions have gone, if we're still in that position in the league, I think it might be time for the board to turn around and say, look, Eddie, this is no longer working. As long as they can bring somebody in who can take us on that extra step, and as long as they'll have the money to spend within PSR, well,
I,
deserves a season.
I can see the only way that we're going to get any form of Europe this season is through a cup win. And to be fair, if we don't win a cup or sneak maybe into the Europa League competition, I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world. Even if Eddie Howe did. Well, I can't see them getting rid of him. To be honest, I'm kind of the belief that the board know that they've let him down to a certain degree. Like they've made appointments who haven't stuck around. They got rid of Amanda Staveley when Amanda Staveley was kind of like the Eddie Howe ally, and even last season, even over the summer, they were constantly fighting to keep Isak, and
That's
as a
important, I think.
consequence, the rest of the squad wasn't addressed properly. We should not have been going into this season with Lewis Hall's backup being Dan Burn.
Do you think if we'd have sold Alexander Isak within, say, a week of him refusing to play against Celtic, we'd be in a much better position now?
Well, yeah, because we would have had the money to be able to spend, and I don't necessarily think that had Liverpool. I mean, it's difficult to say, isn't it? Because the ifs and buts. I mean, they bought Isak and Ekatike at the same time, so they may well have screwed us over on both of those. But we would have been in a better position to actually find a striker with that money in our back pocket, and we would have also been able to then strengthen the rest of the squad. I mean, cause to be fair, like, I think Jacob Ramsey only came in because we had the money at that time. There might have been alternative options that we were looking at, but we just didn't have that PSR headroom.
You don't know, because I think you're spot on. If the board's kind of filibustered that whole Isak situation that it ended up all happening on deadline day and Whistler and all that has been extremely detrimental to Eddie Howe. And if that's come at boardroom level, they need to carry the can for that. We don't know where the source of that decision was, and anyone who says otherwise is lying. You know, you haven't got any insight in the club as to who was saying he's going nowhere. Whether they weren't sitting having a conversation with when they could have resolved it, or I don't know. But the fundamental of it is, Hutch, today we lost again. We lost to Brentford. I'm going to do a little bit about Brentford now. This is something that we've been doing, and I'm going to just get this up on the screen because I kind of dislike losing to anybody really, but this is a little thing we've been doing about where we see the teams in the Premier League lying on a scale, and we've gone from worldwide through massive, where Newcastle United are, big, medium, small, and tin pot. So, without any prejudice, Hutch, I've got a little graphic up for anyone watching on YouTube. Where would you place Brentford on that scale?
Well, they're worldwide, aren't they, Jamie? Would you agree with that?
I don't think they are, mate. I don't think they are.
Go on, stick them in tin pot.
I'm not going to argue in the slightest. I think, and you know, there's probably going to be people saying, "Oh, they're there on merit. They just beat us today. It's sour grapes, blah blah blah." But you see, when you lose a game like this, right? The way I think about it, last week when we lost to West Ham have had 30,000 people from East London, Essex, that surrounding area, who live, eat, and breathe West Ham United, going to that ground for decades. It's a big English club. We put them in big. You could say that about many teams. You know, you might not like losing to Man United, but it makes a lot of people happy. Aston Villa, even the Magnums. Brentford are a team that have spent their whole lives in the lower leagues. It's another London club, and the Premier League's got damn enough of them. And I can't help but think we've lost to them today. There's maybe about a couple of hundred households around northwest London that are absolutely buzzing, and the rest of the people who go to that 15,000 seater stadium, or a mixture of day trippers and kind of Johnny come latelys and people who support Brentford and Manchester United and don't know who to support when they play each other there. And if and when they do go down, for a start, 15,000 seater ground, that means you can only get something like 1,200 away tickets. That's nearly a couple of thousand fans that aren't getting to a game every week that they would if it was Sheffield United or something. And when they do go down, nobody will have any interest in Brentford. If like West Ham were to go down this year, the Championship story would all be about West Ham. If Everton ever went down, wow, the interest in that would be massive when we were down there.
Yeah.
But it's just another team kind of taking up a place. And I bet you a lot of people are saying negative things about me thinking that. But that's the way it is. I think, this is football's a fans game in this country. It represents big communities. That ain't a big community. It's not an established club. Tin Pot.
It is a small village in London, and I agree with you. I genuinely think that they will have a few hundred, maybe a few thousand loyal fans, and I think the rest kind of once they move into the Brentford area, then just go to the games because it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that should something happen to their model, which is, let's face it, the only reason why A, they're in the Premier League and B, staying in the Premier League, I think should their model falter in any particular way, they would drop down to the Championship and no one would care.
Absolutely. And I hope that's obviously not going to happen this year. It's
Nope.
What's happened today has done absolutely nothing to put that case forward. But I think when they do, there's a couple of other teams. I won't spoil that particular feature going forward that I would say that about. But much as I don't like some of these big teams, like the one that we share a county with, I think they add a lot more to the league. I think they give it a bit more buzz, whereas Brentford are just there, just existing, sensible business. Good team, good players, well run, and all that bollocks. But just hurry up and get relegated so we can have a proper Premier League. So we're not bitter here on a Newcastle comparison, of course. Like and subscribe, follow us on YouTube. But sometimes you've just got to tell it like it is. Let's forget about them now, Hutch, because there was another game this week, and even though it might seem ridiculous based on the league form we've just been discussing, it was actually quite a canny evening on Wednesday, wasn't it, when we beat Athletic Club Bilbao 2-0 in the Champions League?
It was, yeah. I mean, obviously being in the stadium was rocking, as you would expect. Town was rocking beforehand.
Wasn't it? Oof.
Forgive the guy sat next to me for having a red and white scarf because he traded his black and white scarf with one of the Bilbao fans. I think it's the only ever time I will forgive someone for having a red and white scarf in the stadium.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, the game itself was a weird one. I don't think we necessarily played brilliantly, but Bilbao, no, and Bilbao came and pressed us, and we just needed to beat that press, and we did. There was a couple of hairy moments where they got passed back to Pope, and yeah, again, I do think that Pope is possibly living on borrowed time at the present moment in time, especially with Ramsdale on the bench. But yeah, tell us about that burn header, Jamie, and the physics-defying element of it.
Oh, I know. Well, I think I know what you're getting at here because obviously, as Hutch said, we were there, and it just as that free kick was being played in, I was seeing how they kind of settled in a little bit more and about how terrible everybody was against West Ham, and I said Dan Burn had a stinking game, didn't he? And about 0.2 seconds later, Dan Burn connected and scored arguably the most aesthetically pleasing header we've ever seen. He had from where it was because we sit in the corner at the opposite end where that was scored, and we were kind of behind it. And I saw him head it across, and I said, "Is someone going to get on the end of that?" I mean, I didn't have time to see it, but I thought it in my head, said it to myself. And then it just sort of bent, didn't it? It was like someone had hit it with the outside of an Adidas Predator, a Nobby Solano curler.
It did look from where we were stood like it was just basically going straight out of play. Maybe not even hit the corner flag, maybe just go off for a throw in, and then all of a sudden you saw like Belize's end just rapturous applause, and you realise it had gone in. And it wasn't until I saw the video of it that I actually appreciated what the hell had happened. And I mean,
there's like a still frame, isn't there? And it just looks
this
like
went in.
It looks like it's going like 10 foot wide and from where he is. But yeah, a brilliant goal, and it was an important one as well because I think it was at that point where Newcastle were doing that thing where they were steadily in control, but couldn't make the breakthrough. And you're thinking, longer this goes on, more
Yeah,
likely is Bilbao give us a sucker punch because they played a little bit like
yeah,
that.
they were pressing our backline really, really well, and there was a couple of times where someone had made a mistake and
Oh, wait,
gifted them the ball.
Gordon gave it away. That one,
Uh,
Gordon basically put one there blow through on goal, and I think Pope got him out of jail a little bit with a save. But got there in the end.
yeah,
Like you
great.
say,
I mean, it's. I think this is where the comparison comes in, doesn't it? Because we are doing really, really well in these competitions, these other competitions, the so-called, if the Premier League is your bread and butter, then these competitions are like, the ice cream and the cherry on the cake. And we seem to be just eating our desserts really, really, we're just going for dessert after dessert after dessert. Yeah.
we're
So
going to get
while it's
diabetes.
really
Is that what you're
nice,
saying?
well, I'm just, it does, like, it's been pointed out a few times, but it does seem like they seem to be able to get up for these big games, especially under the lights at St James's, whether it be Tottenham or whether it be Bilbao or, we even played well against Barcelona. I know we lost, but we played well against Barcelona. And yet,
Do you think the
in
crowd's
these,
part of that? Do you think the crowd in the home game and the settled atmosphere just makes them feel a bit more comfortable?
I mean, possibly. I, I do think that it is special under the lights because, I mean, we kind of got through the Fulham game. We weren't
Yeah,
brilliant.
that was lucky.
There was hairy moments, and let's face it, they kind of gifted us the win with two really stupid mistakes. So I don't necessarily think it's like Fortress St James's Park. I just think
No,
on these nights, the crowd seems to be up for it more. We seem to be able to get through these games, and there seems to be a lot of expenditure.
they were. That's what you do. Expenditure, you expend it. But they were pretty similar games. Tottenham last week and Bilbao won because they weren't memorable
Tottenham,
sort of life performances of a lifetime like Paris Saint-Germain was a couple of years ago, or even like Arsenal in the League Cup last year. They were just like professional sort of second gear. Score one header in the
yeah,
first half, score another one in the second half, and dust it off. Type jobs, weren't they?
Tottenham was comfortable. I think that's what you can say about it. I like they'd only made a couple of changes from their primary squad that had played in that weekend, and we
From their
even though
primary squad, what they played primary school kids that weekend.
the,
That's a very Spursy thing to do, isn't it?
they probably lost as well, to be fair. So,
Um,
but like the squad that played in the Premier League compared to the squad that played in the Carabao Cup, we made 8 changes. I think they made 2, and it was very, very comfortable. Like for the likes of Lewis Miley and Joe Willock played really well. And this is what I'm saying, like in terms of like him, how being loyal. I do think that a lot of players are going to be knocking on the door and saying, I played well in this game, I played well in that game. And I think it'll start with Ramsdale, to be honest, because
yeah,
Ramsdale in that game basically controlled the ball from the back, whereas Nick Pope, anytime the ball comes near him, there is that instant fear that something is going to go very badly wrong.
I think though we've got to say in what's been a bad week, it was a memorable day, and the game really wasn't. I think should point out that Bilbao had a lot of players missing, including
Yeah,
Nico Williams, who, if anyone hasn't seen it, scored an absolute worldie in the La Liga game this weekend. But we did the professional job. 9 points in the Champions League has us in sixth place in the table.
yep.
Now, what that means, and I know there might be a lot of people who haven't quite got the head around the Champions League. If we can stay in that top 8, we forego an entire round of the Champions League, which is the playoff round, and we go straight into the last 16, and we'll get home advantage in the second leg, and we'll get one of the teams that do end up in the playoff who will be a lot more beatable than if we did get one of the big 8, one of the teams that do end up in the top 8. So that could be a really big thing to aim for, not least because we could do without another two-legged European tie in February when the playoff round is, and when I believe you're in Athens, David, as well for
I am.
one of those matches. So Bayern Munich it is.
Well, it's not going to be Bayern Munich, is it? Because they're currently, are they top or are they second?
Yeah, I think they've got 100%. So I think it looks really positive. I don't see, looking at Marseille and Leverkusen, I know it sounds daft because our away form is so bad, but we can improve a bit. I think those are the sort of teams that are about the level of a middling, average Premier League side. And then we've got a home game against PSV in January. We'll be hot favourites for that. And when we go to Paris, maybe they won't have anything to play for. So I think positive all around. And as you mentioned before, the Bilbao fans, there must have been about 10,000 of them in the town, and they were having a great time for it. And that's another little
That's what
comparison.
matters. That's what matters.
It's kind of one of those games. That's what football's all about, isn't it? They went to the Newcastle United Foundation. They planted a tree and had a game of football against the foundation team and gave them a little plaque. The War Flags gave them a commemorative flag in the big market. You couldn't get shifted in that big market, could you? And they're just Basques everywhere. For 'tis what they are, people from the Basque region. They absolutely covered the town. And for anyone who doesn't know, that goes back to 1994 when we played them in the UEFA Cup. So, bit of a comparison with that. I was actually at that game in 1994.
And how old were you then?
I'm not at liberty to say it, David. Do not put me on the spot on the air like that. I was a child, put it that way. I may have been wearing the same blue strip that I had on the other night, but I was young, yeah. So
It did look tight on you, mate.
Well, I'd do that deliberately. But Newcastle won that 1-3-2, but they were 3-0 up and cruising, and they kind of sort of went to sleep a little bit, let Bilbao score 2 late goals. Bilbao won the away leg 1-0 and went through on away goals, which don't exist anymore. But the Bilbao fans had a really nice time in Newcastle that year. There's an urban myth that one of them got left behind in Newcastle and was treated really, really well. Somebody took him in and looked after him. And word kind of got round Bilbao. And then when we went over there, everybody was treated magnificently. Derek Platten was there, and he's got a nice, well, a really long, boring story about sleeping in a shack full of hand grenades somewhere out in Bilbao. And which, I'm sure you'll tell anybody out there. Don't bother investing in the car map, because Derek telling his story of his trip to Bilbao is out there for download somewhere. But there was just a lot of really firm friendships formed, and it was great to continue that. And this time we came out on top, which is nice because they knocked us out last time. But like you said, it's what football's all about, isn't it? It's what sport's all about. Just a community club and another community club joining the communities together and just enjoying the experience. And hopefully Paris will treat us like that when we go over there. Do you reckon, David?
I don't think so somehow, but I look forward to it nonetheless.
Yeah, we'll just stick to the beaten path.
We certainly will.
So that was Bilbao in history, but what else happened at this point in the past? So there's a few things to cover. I'm going to very quickly go into the usual. So 5 years ago, and this might be a hard one to believe for anyone who's quite new to the Premier League, Steve Bruce's manager, behind closed doors, we lost 2-0 to Southampton. Yes, newcomers. Southampton did used to win games in the Premier League. That wasn't even a horrible result, and they were quite a well thought of team. I mean, well, it was always a pretty horrible result in that Brucey, wasn't it?
He didn't have many good results, to be fair, and we were very lucky to stay up that season.
And 10 years ago, here's a subversive result. We weren't lucky enough to stay up this season, 2015 to 16, but this
No,
was
we weren't.
one positive. 1-0 for Steve McLaren's United, away from home to Eddie Howe's Bournemouth. Jose Perez a scorer. And isn't it ironic? Because we kind of beat Bournemouth now, but then when we were shit, we got an away win against them, which rocketed us up to 17th place in the Premier League, where we would not remain. We'd end up 18th. So a bittersweet there, and a lot of parallels with where we are now. But Hutch, I'm not going to focus too much on the games of 5 years ago and 10 years ago, because there is a big anniversary this week, which I'm sure you'll remember, because 2 years ago. Do you remember where we were 2 years ago?
I remember some of it, which I'm sure you'll go into in great detail.
Yes, I will.
Because we were in Dortmund.
Yeah, out Deutschland. So for anyone with very short memories, we played Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League. This was the game that stood out to us, even though that was a cracking group. You'd been to Milan already, hadn't you, Hutch?
I had.
It was my first trip of the Champions League campaign, and we had that whole situation where it felt like the whole of Newcastle went over, didn't it? There was thousands of us there. Not an easy place to get to, is it, Dortmund?
Yeah, so as you say, thousands of people went, and unfortunately, as thousands of people went, the kind of like the standard routes very much got very expensive very quickly to get to Dortmund, because there is no direct flight from an external airport into into Dortmund itself. So the nearest cities are they Frankfurt and
Dusseldorf is the closest one, I think.
So we initially looked at that, and unfortunately, it basically got priced out. The money went to just stupid money around that weekend. So we instead looked further afield, and you chose to use my connections with Hamburg to try and get there that way.
Which seemed like a good idea at the time, didn't it?
It seemed like a very good idea at the time. It didn't seem like a great idea the day before we were due to fly out, when an individual took onus at something. I don't 100% know the story, so I'm not going to try and recant it. But for whatever reason, some guy decided that he would drive onto Hamburg's airport and stop all flights. Now, we kind of thought,
airport under siege.
Yeah, we thought, our flight isn't until was it 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning? We'll be fine. The police will move them on, and it'll be fine. However, at 2 o'clock in the morning, our flight got cancelled as we were making our way down to Heathrow.
Yeah.
So there was a roundabout just outside of Heathrow Airport, and we were driving loops of this roundabout while British Airways were trying to figure out which flight they were going to stick us on.
Yeah, I was on the flight to BA, inflicting my personality on them, and it was just, and so we ended up in Frankfurt, didn't we? But,
we did.
I remember. So basically, Hamburg Airport was under siege, and I remember when I was a teenager, a film called Under Siege came out, which was very, very memorable because you saw Eric Eleniak's tits in it, and in this scenario, it was very appropriate because we were the tits in this, going round and round a roundabout, trying to find somewhere in Germany that would bloody accept us. So we got to Frankfurt, and it was a long old train ride. And by the time we even got to Dortmund,
I mean, we were
very, very drunk.
We were already for the trains alone. Was it 65 quid each down? Because we obviously had tickets from Hamburg, but we weren't flying into Hamburg, so we were going into Frankfurt. So additional money spent on trains to get us to Dortmund. Then we discovered the bar in the train, on the train, and it was a good 2.5, 3 hour train ride. So yeah, we had a few drinks. However, it's got to be said that I kind of had a bit of a hot hand syndrome that day because
Hot hand syndrome. Stop making stuff up. Come on. You're
not
hammered.
not to go into details, but I don't drink a lot.
To cure your hot hands, you just decide to keep steering both of them the whole time. Is that what you're trying to make out?
I wasn't that bad that first day. I was not that bad
Sorry,
that first day. So,
I've just interrupted this protocol.
as you know, I was not that bad on the first day. Let's be real.
Right.
So we got into Frankfurt. We'd had a few beers. We've gone into Frankfurt. We've gone into Dortmund. We had a few beers. We then went and put our bags in the hotel. Went back into Dortmund where our fans were. Had a steak dinner at a local steak joint. It was lovely.
Local steak place. If you're pausing this so I can remember the name of a restaurant I ate tea in 2 years ago, then you're having a tin bath, aren't you?
Then we went
with tea.
Yeah, so then we had a couple of beers on the street, and then we went to the Dortmund bar.
Yeah, that was good. Come on, get the bit where you throw.
That was the next day. So yeah, as I was getting to that, I don't really drink a lot because of a health condition. I'm not going to go into it. But when I do drink, I tend to have probably a bit too much. And because I was fine that first day, I thought, oh well, German beer, it's chemical free. It's absolutely brilliant. And I kind of let my hair down a little bit too much the next day. Now, me and Simon, the other contributor who is usually on here with us, didn't have a ticket for the game. And we were in a pizza place looking at tickets because you could buy tickets in the Dortmund ground, but they were going up all the time because obviously so many Newcastle fans had gone and people were buying tickets in order just to experience that stadium.
There was a point, I've got to jump in here, there was a point where you were going to pay an obscene amount of money for a ticket.
Yeah, and I kind of had to talk Simon down, to be honest, because I think he would have bankrupted himself.
It was you were on them sites. I remember getting on dinner. You were on them sites looking at ticket prices here and there, and it was like in the Dortmund end, and I'm sure you were looking at something like 800 quid for the pit.
Yep.
Is that an exaggeration?
No, in fact, it was more. Because obviously it kept just jumping up all the time. So anyway, then we went out in the main square after we decided that was a terrible idea and we just watched it on the TV. Had some more beers, had a kebab, and then you guys made it off to went off to the game.
Hang on, I need to take it back a bit here because there was
we went to the football. We went to the football museum.
We did. Well, first of all, we went to the Dortmund club shop. And I got this for anyone watching on YouTube. For anybody who's listening, I got a Dortmund toothbrush, and you were a little bit confused and said, "What have you got that for?" And as I'm sure everyone's worked out, why would you get a thing like that? It's to brush your teeth. It's to brush your teeth.
Yeah.
Brush your teeth. And you bought a half and half scarf because you're a bit of a tiger.
I did. It's up there. Which you can't see because I've got this visual on. Anyway, so you guys went to the game and me and Simon tried to find a bar to watch it in. And unfortunately, Dortmund didn't have very many bars showing the game. Not even the Dortmund bar itself was showing the game. So then we had a wander down to the stadium, and there is a bar attached to the stadium where we met a lovely guy from Switzerland who was having...
That guy was Swiss?
Yeah.
Right, all right. Well,
who was watching the game, supported Dortmund.
Germany and Switzerland are next door to each other for any overseas listeners.
But yeah, he was watching the game, while having an argument with both his wife and his girlfriend at the same time, which
Right,
was
okay, you do know this is on the internet, don't you?
haven't given
Jesus.
names. Haven't given names.
What a snitch. Well, you've given enough information about him, haven't you? He might have went home and talked about you. Why, Jesus.
Anyway, but it was at this bar that I kind of like lost all sense of my memory of the rest of the night.
Sobriety.
Sobriety, yeah.
I'm going to take over here. I lost all sense of memory for the night. So you got smashed.
I got smashed.
So, well, I think there's a little bit of a rewind. The way it works for a European away game, as Hutch said before, all the costs of travel of getting there as soon as the fixture is announced, they go up through the roof. I think Ryanair's got someone sitting there saying, and they're going, okay, as soon as Newcastle United get their draw, make sure you put the flights up by 500% wherever they're going. And they all do that. And before you know it, you've got to get in quick and book your travel as soon as you know where you're going. Otherwise, you're either paying a fortune or you're not getting there because everything's sold out. So
I mean,
you've kind of got to book on
to get to
spec, haven't you?
Paris, yeah, to get to Paris, we're also having to go to Amsterdam, aren't we?
Yeah, even though
Simply
you can fly direct from Newcastle, but it was just a cost thing. So you've got to book, and a lot of people book knowing it's unlikely they'll get a ticket, don't they?
Yeah.
And you can just have a great experience in that city and watch a game on the TV, and you never know your luck. You might get one, you might be able to blag one at the last minute. And you and Simon were both sort of on the cusp of whether you could get tickets or not. So you had to book in on the off chance. I think you just missed out, didn't you, Hutch? Sort of
I missed out by a point. I was absolutely furious.
So loyalty points, which are accumulated over time, every time you go to an away game, you get a point. So I started going to away games when I was something like 14 years old, so I've got a lot of points. Martin does also, and you and Simon have got sort of around the 40 mark, haven't you? Or you did then anyway.
I've crept into the 50s now, but yeah, I don't think. Obviously, Simon has very young kids. My kids are slightly more grown up now, so being able to go to a few more over the past couple of years.
Yeah, so but you've kind of got to make that decision, haven't you? And you've got to build them up. So yeah, yous were outside the game. Me and Martin went in the game. You can sit in the Dortmund ground and drink, which you can't do in England. So we had a couple of drinks there, but you had a couple of dozen drinks, I think. Game was completely forgettable. Lost 2-0. It was Newcastle were very injury ravaged and didn't put a particularly good fight up. And it was probably that point where if we'd have got something out of that game, we'd have went through in the Champions League. We nearly recovered it against Paris and Milan, but we ended up going out. And Dortmund were the only team that doubled us in that group. But we came out, and you two were leathered. And then, as if the travelling wasn't enough, we went back, we left the ground, and you already had your Pecker's half and half scarf. But you managed to find a scarf, didn't you, that they dropped outside one of the merch stores?
I did, yeah.
And you pocketed that as well. Jeez, what scarves you must have now. And it was travelled back to that Dortmund bar where some local took exception to me picking that scarf up off the floor when you dropped it, and we had a load of drink with some of the Dortmund fans. By and large, they were magnificent, the Dortmund fans, really welcoming people, the Germans. And then it just fell off the edge a little bit. We're looking for kebabs. And
found a kebab, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. Found plenty of kebabs while we were out there. Simon went wandering around the streets. We eventually got home. And my abiding memory of that night is you on your hands and knees, crawling out of a taxi, vomiting all over Germany.
And that is basically what makes a great away trip.
Yeah, well, they're the bits we can tell, aren't they? But that's part of what's happened the last few years. You get to go places like that. The stadium's magnificent. The city's a brilliant football city. Like you said, we went to the German Football Museum and saw everything that they've ever won, which is quite a lot. And it's a great drinking city, as the whole of Germany is. And even though it wasn't a great result in a group that ended up wrong, a fantastic memory, I think, Hutch.
We also need to slightly mention the next day when I woke up feeling like death, but not as like death as Simon, who went back to bed. And as a consequence, when the taxi came, wasn't fully ready. And we literally made the train to get back to Hamburg by the skin of our teeth.
Yeah. Yeah, we did, didn't we? It's when we're in Paris, it's just a quick flight back, isn't it? Which is good. But
Yeah, but it was a 3-hour train, and then obviously the metro across
I remember
Hamburg.
legging it somewhere. I remember running from platform to platform or something. But that's all part of the fun.
We had to peg it from the taxi stand to the train station. And unfortunately, the train was like 2 minutes late, and we just made it.
Simon also made a mess of his face, didn't he? Putting like ice on what he thought was well. Just get back and like thinking, oh, people's wives aren't going to let them out of the house again, are they? Oh well, we'd better stop talking about that trip now, Hutch. So yeah, that's it. This, and you've got to think, we've talked before about Eddie Howe. He's delivered a lot of great times for us, and I think these last few years have been the best for me in terms of the pace of it, and there's always a brilliant memory every couple of months, it seems. But we'll get into that a little bit, because there is just one more thing to quickly cover in terms of looking back for comparison. And it's 4 years ago. Unspectacular game, 1-1 draw with Brighton. Isaac Hayden, the Newcastle scorer. But the next day, so 4 years ago yesterday, was the day the man arrived. Yes, listeners, it has been 4 years since Jason Tindall was installed as assistant manager of Newcastle United. Jason Tindall, everybody. And Eddie Howe as well. And we don't really know what time we're going to be on, what day we're going to do next week, Hutch, do we? But we're going to do a bit of a look back at Eddie Howe's time.
Yeah, we need to. Well, it'll be arranged and organised later. But yes, we will.
Once Simon's done pebble dashing the toilet, I'm sure he'll be able to have input into when we can get online. And yeah, we're going to do a comparison between Eddie Howe's time when he took over through the relegation fighting iteration of the team, the first Champions League, and where we are now. So, and we're going to do that because there's no games to talk about, because we are now officially on international break, aren't we?
To be fair, this one, I don't usually, but this one has come at an ideal time.
I think you're right there. Let those key players recover, get a bit of a rebooting, give Man City a good old roasting, and go from there.
I hope so.
Anyone else think that'll happen? So, international call-ups, you've got a list, haven't you? But I should point out that we did have 3 people in the England squad, but both Nick Pope and Anthony Gordon have now dropped out, which leaves only Dan Burn in there.
I do have a list somewhere.
So, Pope with a concussion. He went off concussed today in the end, and Gordon, of course, we all suspected he'd be out with that hip injury.
Yeah, so the rest of them, so as you said, Pope and Gordon are out, but Burn is in. Tonali is going to Italy. Hall and Miley have been called up for England under 21s. It will be interesting to see where the Hall actually goes.
I think he will. I think it'll be good game time for him as well. I think that's positive.
Lang of Sweden, Malik Chow and Big Nick. Malik Chow and Big Nick have gone to Germany. Bruno has been called up by Brazil. Alex Murphy has been called up by the Ireland under-21 squad. Leo Shahar has been called up by the England under-19s. Roman Dowell has been called up by England under-17s. And
All right,
finally,
let's not go into all that. Is there anyone
come
else
on.
from the first team? Come on, man.
No, but Mohamed Wadani has been called up by Libya.
I don't know who he is.
No, I
And
don't know who he is either.
my son has been called up by West Hope United, for anyone wanting to go that far down into the grassroots. But thank you. But yeah, Bruno called up for Brazil, which has been exhausting. But I believe they're only playing in England and France. No Joe Linton, but he went off injured today anyway, so perhaps he wouldn't have been able to join them. But that might not be as exhausting for Bruno because he's starting to look a bit jaded, I think.
Yeah,
So hopefully that's a positive. And the other as well, there's quite important internationals for a lot of teams because although England have qualified, they're the only team in the UEFA qualifying section who have qualified so far, and all the rest is going to get sorted out in this next 2 weeks. So yeah, there'll be watch-alongs on Talk TV, but largely the international break can be a little bit of a dull time, can't it? So we'll get in there. We'll have a little look back on Eddie Howe's time, as we said, do a bit of a comparison over the past few years, and I'm sure Simon will be back. He might look a little bit thinner, a little bit greener, but he'll be back. So in Hutch, just wrapping in on this week, which, as I said, looking back with balance, great win against Bilbao, great progress in the Champions League. We'll maybe do a little half-time report on that next week. How are you feeling overall, though, about the season? Good answer. Okay.
looking back at that Borussia Dortmund trip and looking back at that particular season, obviously the squad wasn't as strong, but our advantage basically came because, like as you say, we weren't doing particularly well in the league either, although we were doing slightly better than we are now. We really picked up in the second half of the season, and that was because basically the fixtures, just like the fixture congestion, just really died down. It doesn't look
That's not going to happen this year.
congestion is going to die down, and so we really need to find a way of winning these games, whether it be either our home form has to be pretty much perfect between now and the end of the season, or we have to start winning away from home as well, and creating a bit of a gap between us and the relegation zone, because at 2 points at the moment is starting to feel a bit squeaky bum.
We do have to start winning away from home because our next game is at Everton, and I'm going. And I don't want my weekend to be spoiled by Newcastle United for about 4,000th time in my life. And then the next away game after that is Sunderland, and that's a whole other show and a whole other discussion. But for this one, to recap, Brentford disappointing, Bilbao professional and encouraging, yeah?
Pretty much.
The month ahead is a big one, but first we'll take a bit of a breather for internationals. In the meantime, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. If you are listening to us on a pod, please subscribe because we'll try and brighten up weekends like this. Well, I will anyway. It's not really your thing, is it?
It's not, but just before you go any further, Jamie, we would also like to thank the Geordie Boot Boys for providing the tick tape that you will probably see if you are watching on YouTube. But yeah, thank you very much for this wonderful evening to be able to get it all out there.
Oh yeah, or whatever time it is, wherever people are in the world. And I guess that's it for now. Thanks, Hutch, for being the one who turned up. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And we'll see you next week when we talk about Eddie Howe and such things like that. Anything else, Hutch, before we go?
No, just enjoy your international break.
Well, I'm not going to give that, am I?
Well, no, you're not. But well, you might, because we'll have another conversation. about, and we can reminisce on Dortmund again, can't we? But Simon will be there that time, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, yeah, and hopefully we won't have anything over his eye this time. Right. Okay. Good to talk to you, Hutch. Thanks for listening, everybody. Smell you next time. Just, yeah, Hutch, a wave doesn't really work if someone's listening on a podcast. Say goodbye, man.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.